I've been listening to James' show. Anybody ever heard the Hake Report? Yeah, and it has one of the dumbest song intros you ever want to hear. Really, but I'm addicted to it.
Yep.
I find myself singing the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la, and I'm like, wow, this is a dumb song, but it has no meaning. This is James. This is his show. The Hake Report. He's on every Sunday morning at 9 a.m., thehakereport.com. And his friend made up this song, and he's playing a guitar. It sounded like they had nothing else to do. It looked like James said, hey, can you make a song for my show? Oh, yeah, let's do this. The Hake Report, la, 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 the Hake Report. That's all it says. Isn't that right?
Oh, I think I was saying I always knew Trump was going to win.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay. So
I did too.
Yeah, I knew first of all that after Barack Obama, who was the no matter what anybody thinks about him, the first black president, a huge cultural icon.
Yeah.
So I knew that whoever followed him had to be. Hillary couldn't hold it up. I just didn't think it would work. And I tend to look at things in historical terms. So I knew that only Trump could win. I knew that nobody could really beat him.
Yeah.
And so there was, he did a couple times. I think he said something one time and I was like, whoa. But that was still me being in that mindset of, the presidential politician, quote unquote. But frankly, I liked it. I like the fact that Trump is not presidential. I like that he's a regular person. I like to see a person. I like that. And I think a lot of people like that realness. And I just wish more so-called POCs could be much more open to the realness, because that's what we say we love.
I think that, a lot of them are. A lot of them are, even if they don't like him, they like him, and there's a lot of them that are not speaking up, but there's a lot who are now speaking up. They're calling into Jesse's show every day. There's the Walk Away campaign. I think, and I knew it would happen too, because he is so real. And I know that in spite of the darkness and delusion and brainwashing that happens among all people, especially people of color, but all people, that I know that people, and I know that black people in particular, and I know that even Hispanics, they really do value genuineness. How can you deny it unless you're in total darkness, you have to respect realness. And even if you are in total darkness, you're forced to respect it. You're just, even if you're totally disrespecting Trump, you're giving him that attention that he deserves,
That's one of the most beautiful things about this whole thing is such a constant win-win. For him, I'm saying win-win. He can't lose. I'll say it that way. Is that no matter, if they come out, they're not giving him much positive coverage at all.
Yeah.
So, obviously he will win there, but it doesn't matter. It hasn't mattered. And I love him for that. He's like a superhero.
Yeah. It's really true. Like, you consider all the negative coverage and scrutiny and all of that, and he holds up fine. It really sets a good example that we should really pay attention to and learn from. Every day I'm like so grateful that he's president, and I want to take advantage of the time that we have with him there to build our own character and selves up, so that when he's gone, if we're still a country, that we can keep it going. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because Ronald Reagan, people thought was great, and look where we are now. We're in such a
Right.
total morass, and it's partly his fault because he did certain things like the amnesty and things like that. But it's all of our fault. Like it's everyone's fault who
Yeah.
was looking to him to save us when
Right.
they're not moral people themselves.
Yeah, it goes back to that principle of what you were saying that when Jesse wasn't at church that day, and
Yeah.
I think that's one of the just period politically. I had to tell one of my best friends last week that I have no respect for her political opinion because she's so uninvolved, but she hates everything about Trump and the Republican Party, but doesn't know a drop about what's going on or really anything about the Republican Party or about the Democratic Party for that matter. So she doesn't vote, may not even be registered to vote, doesn't care to. And there are a lot of people that way with such strong opinions and such strong hatred. It baffles my mind.
You know, what's also tough is the people who do know about this stuff. And they are, I guess it's that knowledge is pride thing. It just puffs them up, and they're such intellectual snobs that they can't even look at Trump for what he is. They can't see reality. They're just, like I said, puffed up on their knowledge. And there's so many people like that. And you see it in all cultures, the black community and the whites and everybody. And that's why this education thing is it's so dangerous, because people are just tempted to stay in their intellect rather than reality.
Yeah. No, I think that I've been hearing Jesse talk more about that in terms of the Bible. Actually, after this interview, I'm doing another interview about that specific thing where, and I've been, it's a good friend of mine, but I've been wrestling with him over this thing because he just, to him, the Bible is the Word of God. And that's,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
What's funny about these people that believe that the Bible is the Word of God, the Word of God is so much bigger than the Bible, right? I mean, they have to acknowledge that if they're even following the Bible. And the Bible itself, it's exactly the things that Jesse is saying. It says if you don't forgive, then God won't forgive you. And it says that go and sin no more. Like almost, there's so many verses that say you do not sin. And that's one of the... And, like, by that standard, I'm not a true Christian, but I feel like so betrayed and so frustrated with the church and the people who accept sin as we always are going to sin until we die, because that's not what the Bible says. I mean, yes, we are perfect and we are being perfected, but this acceptance is such an evil intellectual lie. What I think that these people who think that they're following the Bible is they're really following their own intellect and their own knowledge. It's no different from the people who are brainwashed in liberalism. It's really no different because it's just another lie that's more closely imitates the truth. Like Satan came as the light, and Satan is coming as the church and as the pastors and as the Bible.
Yeah.
When they're leaning on their own understanding and not what God says. They don't believe even Jesus. Jesus said to be perfect.
Now I automatically group it up, in fact, with my concept of citizenship and that sort of like, to me, you can be a perfect citizen.
Yeah.
I don't see why you can't, and it doesn't mean that you can't improve at it also, but you don't have to commit crimes. You can respect rule of law every day.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to be an imperfect citizen. I don't see why somebody has to be an imperfect child of God. I don't, and maybe the conversations haven't been had enough or something. I'm not sure.
It's a great parallel, but I'm so glad that this conversation is happening.
Yeah, me too.
I know that Jesse's talking a lot about it, and he's getting a lot of opposition, which I love because it's bringing out the real conversation, because
Yeah.
this sin has been so accepted.
Hmm.
And I don't know if any other spiritual leaders, if you want to call them that, are having this conversation. But actually, I do know they are, because there's
Oh.
Dean Saxton, Brother Dean Saxton. He's a street preacher out of Arizona, and he says, "I don't sin,"
Hmm.
because and he's strictly just following what the Bible says.
Yeah.
He's not a follower of Jesse or anything. He's just
Right.
a regular Christian, and he happens to be a street preacher, but he's saying these things that are true, and that's so it's nice to see the truth spring up among all the weeds.
I'm most pleased about that at this time. So it's definitely I guess for this light ahead that we have to have a certain degree of darkness.
Yeah,
So is that's allowing me to not be pessimistic about everything.
yeah.
As we talk about this, I'm thinking about I did not catch her name, but a couple weeks ago there was a young lady at church and she was hot with Jesse.
Oh yeah,
Um,
the young lady, like
yeah,
15 years old or something.
yeah, yep.
Yeah.
How is she?
You know, I don't see a lot of her. She comes from time to time. She's been coming since
Oh,
she was before I ever showed up, I believe.
okay. Yeah, that sounds
And
like
that
she's
was 11 years
beautiful.
ago. So she's been coming since she was a small child. Um, I think she's on the same path that so many young people are on today, where they grow up, they love the truth, they love real people like Jesse. Um, they just they're not bitter people, and then they become bitter as they become adolescents.
Hmm.
And it's so I think it may be universal. It's a sad situation because um, I think she's living with her grandmother, maybe.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, that's what it sounded like.
yeah, so like both her mother and father are not good examples for her, and neither, honestly, is her grandmother. If you heard that church service,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so but it's so common today. I mean, whites are at, well, she's not totally white, but whites are at the above the crisis level that Patrick Moynihan was crying out about
Hmm.
when blacks were at 25% out of wedlock birth rate. Whites are
Hmm.
at 30% now,
Yeah,
and the culture is a lot worse today than it was in 1965 when that was happening. There's a
yeah.
lot more shamelessness. There's a lot more acceptance of all sorts of evil, and so that this family situation and morality situation and acceptance of anger, and because she was advocating for anger.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so she's
And a lot
gotta
of
she's gotta
people
live
in
her
that.
life and suffer, and hopefully she gets through it and comes back to reality.
Well, I hope so. I
Yeah.
really felt for her, and she sounded. Um, I have a 17-year-old daughter, and so it wasn't. It sounded familiar.
Yeah.
She did sound
You
angst. She
still
did
there?
sound
Oh, you cut
angsty.
out for a second.
Oh, can you hear me now?
So you said it sounded familiar. You have a seven.
Yeah, yep. So it sounds familiar. That teen angst.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what if she had any other issues going on,
She may
and I
well,
don't.
and she may well, and that teen angst isn't just because she's a teenager. It's because she's coming into her own, and she's starting to, resent slash love hate her parents, her grandmother. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
it is that teen angst, but it's not because she's having all these
Right.
hormones per se. It's because, I mean, maybe that's probably got to be a big part of it, but it's just
Might have
she's going
contributed.
into that fallen state that we are all in.
The heart is the biggest part of the momentum. I think. It. Yeah, I do think all teams go through stuff, but
Yeah,
I mean, I've known some teams that are not necessarily walking around with a lot of resentment
right.
or at least not outright reason
Yeah.
with the world. I wanted to ask you some questions while I. Oh, by the way, happy belated birthday, man!
Oh,
What
thank
did
you,
you do
man.
for your birthday? Yeah, yeah.
Did it.
Yeah, no problem. Did you do anything?
We had cake here.
Oh,
Well, Kelly made a cake. It was actually her birthday the next day, and
oh
so we
wow.
just had some cake. And yeah, I went on the 4th of July. I met up with my family, and we kind of combined a bunch of July birthdays. And
Okay,
yeah, it was cool. And I may have dinner with a couple buddies this
cool,
evening.
cool, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. Who's been your favorite guest on The Fallen State?
That's a really good question. I I really liked that Baltimore former cop who
Mm,
is very
mm.
liberal.
Are blacks suffering due to the lack of moral character and the destruction of the family, or this idea of racism?
But see, you're making claims that just.
That's a question.
But no.
That was a question.
No, it's a
Are
claim.
they suffering due to the destruction of the family, lack of moral character, or is there something else that's
Okay,
causing them
you
to
compound
suffer?
things. So family structure and moral character are separate issues. You understand that, right?
You haven't answered the question yet.
Right. You can't combine separate issues into one question. So, or is it because they lack moral character? Absolutely not. And an example that I can give of that with complete ease is that in Cleveland, when Tamir Rice was murdered, no cops got killed. If a cop kills my daughter, rest assured, cops will get killed.
He's
Yeah.
against the Dakota Access Pipeline, and he was talking about, he kind of supports Black Lives Matter, the narrative, because he was a cop and he saw a lot of wrong things cops were doing in Baltimore, and he himself did wrong stuff. Nothing like excessively crazy that should put him in jail, I don't think, but he
Oh.
did some wrong. He may have, I don't know, but he went real viral back in like 2014.
I did remember him. I recognized him when I saw the interview.
I liked his realness. As angry as he was, he still like respected Jesse, because Jesse's patient and yet doesn't back down. And I think
Right.
that he really respected that about Jesse.
Gotcha.
And so that was a nice one. I can't say that was my favorite. I would have to. There's a lot of good ones.
Yeah, yeah, they really are, man. It sounds like I know a lot of people. I can hear by the callers on the Jesse Peterson radio show.
Yeah.
that is like everybody binge watches. Not everybody, but
A lot of them.
just yeah. I mean, I have it up on the Apple TV YouTube app, and basically we're just watching y'all for maybe 80% of the time. Yeah, it's just not a lot. Sometimes we'll switch it up, throw other stuff in there.
Right.
But
It's-
go ahead.
It's so nice because he's an excellent conversationalist. He says the things that people are screaming at their TV or their radio that you'd never hear on cable. But I mean, cable is just long gone as far as cable news goes, except for Newsmax since they have Jesse. But it's so nice and it's so refreshing, and he's so old school that he's unique among YouTube hosts.
He really is. He really is. And I'm glad to see him becoming so popular.
Me too.
Get a Job is doing a great job with those
Definitely.
Savage Moments videos.
Yeah.
That's probably pulling in a lot of people.
Definitely. Yep.
Those things are hilarious. Is there anybody that you want to see on the show?
There's a lot of people that I wish I could see on the show. I would like to see Michael Eric Dyson come on. That would be interesting.
Yeah, it would.
If he would, be real. I would love to see, I had wanted to see George Zimmerman, and there's a lot of figures that have been controversial, gone through things, and, Obama would be, I can't imagine him being on the show because
I've been wanting to see that.
he's so concerned about his image.
Yeah, yeah.
But, there's some some black women that I would love to see on the show. There's so much. Yeah. Oh, you know who I would love to see is that Hispanic George Lopez. If he would
Oh,
be on the show and just have a real conversation with Jesse, that would be interesting. It would be fireworks, possibly. Whoopi Goldberg, I mean, all these.
that would be good.
I
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of these people that I used to respect, and they've truly, this Trump derangement syndrome that goes around. It's really brought the worst out of them, and it's kind
Yeah.
of. It's very funny, amusing. I used to really respect Don Lemon, even though he was liberal and homosexual and all those things.
Yeah.
But he used to like try to, and I think he does like try to be honest. But these people can't help themselves for how they hate truth. They hate Trump. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, to me, because I kind of had the same thing. Well, actually, it sounds like I used to like Don Lemon a little less than you did.
Yeah.
But I saw him on, oh, was it Dave Rubin? Maybe Dave, I
Don
think Dave
Lemon?
Rubin had, yeah,
With
I
Dave
think
Rubin?
I think so.
That's that host who yeah. I know who Dave Rubin is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure it was because they're friends, and
Okay.
so my opinion of Don Lemon shifted a little bit
Yeah.
because I saw him as a little more real,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was like, okay, like maybe this guy isn't so bad. I forgot why in the world I talked about Don Lemon. I'm so bad at that.
I brought him up because, it's just these people that go off the deep end. They'd be
Yeah.
interesting guests for
Oh,
Jesse to
right.
talk to.
Yeah, I want to see Louis Farrakhan.
Yeah, I would love
I-
that. I would really love that because,
Yeah, I would pay money.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his followers just don't do the trick. We've had some of his followers on before, and they're just kind of cheap imitations of him.
Yeah.
They have this straightforward. They dress well, and they try to present themselves as very polite and nice, yet extreme.
Have you ever had Wesley Muhammad, Dr. Wesley Muhammad from the Nation of Islam?
It's possible. Before I was a producer,
Okay.
I don't know. It doesn't ring a bell.
I would think he would be a good one.
Yeah.
I would think. But I definitely I want to hear that conversation. Like a lot of Black Americans, I had I don't think any Black American really escapes having an affinity for Minister Farrakhan at one point or another, at least.
In their lifetime, you mean?
Yeah, in their lifetime.
Yeah.
To me, he's the de facto leader of Black America. Yeah, like essentially. I mean, he can go anywhere he wants. He can, and if he goes into a hood, the gangs are, 90%, 95% not going to bother him at all. Probably higher than that.
Yeah.
And but I would like to see. I think of Jesse as, and I know I'm gonna make some of my friends upset, but to me Jesse is the great Black hope. And I'm not just saying it. I'm not just saying it because he says the great white hope, but this message of the heart of not managing anger, not this righteous anger lie, but this head-on discussion, truth telling to people right there in their faces. And I said to you when I called that one of the things that strikes me the most is just about every single day there's somebody new calling, talking about how this message, not Jesse so much, but this message of true love is really changing their lives.
Yeah.
And just people talking to their mothers and fathers, forgiving their mothers and fathers. That's so powerful. And I even had a conversation with my mom a couple weeks ago, because I realized that one of the observations that I made about when I was growing up is that she seemed to raise me more like her younger brother, but my younger sister and brother, who are only a year and 2 years younger than me, she raised them like her kids.
Okay.
And so I said that from my perspective, she loved me a little better than she loved them because she didn't treat me like her property. It was less authoritarian. She wasn't super authoritarian with them, but she treated me like her brother. And so we always had kind of a brother-sister relationship. And I feel like I have the best relationship with my parents because I was raised a little more like I'm my mom and dad's oldest and the oldest son. But I believe that all children should be raised like young little brothers and little sisters, and that if we would stop raising them like our kids, my son, my daughter, that we would almost automatically give them to God. We would have to at least give them to the highest ideal in our mind. And I think even that might lead us away from this love affair we have with our own feelings, because you would see that when you become authoritarian with your child, that you're playing God with them and you're stepping out of that brother-sister role with them. And I think having these brother-sister relationships might head off that forgiveness at the head, and so many people wouldn't need to grow up with having that resentment and then having to return to their spiritual parents with that act of forgiveness, that they would just have loving friendships, loving relationships with them, and would naturally be led to God.
That is
I know I said a lot there.
That's an interesting idea, and eventually that's the ideal that the sons and daughters and mothers and fathers are supposed to reach.
Yeah.
Where they become, if they're truly going to be spiritual brothers and sisters, that's what they are.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's I like that point.
Thank you. Yeah, man, it's been like swimming in my head for about 2 weeks now, really, really strongly. So as I'm trying to implement that and correct some of the mistakes I made with my daughter. Again, she's, a young woman now. But we're, still dealing with the turmoil that grew from her being born out of wedlock, and her. I'm very fortunate that I don't have this baby mama drama where I have to, we're very close. We had to get there because we were at that stage,
right.
But thankfully we at least are able to communicate, and have grown to be like brother and sister over the years. So I think that has helped to not let my daughter get too far. But we've definitely made some mistakes.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Farrakhan and Jesse being the great Black Hope, and that is so true. And it's for all people across the world, like people from Israel, Sweden, and it's interesting. Like there's a lot of Black guys from Sweden, from Israel. Muli from Israel was a caller that we recently put up and featured. There was another guy, I think his name was Simon, from Sweden. He's a Black guy, and it's interesting. But it's all races are really resonating with this message because it's something that afflicts everybody.
It's a very pure message.
Yeah, totally. And that's really true. And I do wish that I would love to see Jesse interview Farrakhan. I remember seeing Alex Jones interview him, and I respect Alex, what he's built, and that's awesome. But it was almost as though maybe I'm wrong for this, but my impression was that he was kind of kissing up to Lewis, and
I got that impression a little bit too.
Yeah, I imagine anybody would be kind of starstruck because he's
well,
such a
that was what I was about to say. He's such a commanding figure
Right.
that, you know, it would almost anybody will buckle. I think that's kind of why I want to see Jesse.
Me too.
Also interviewing him, because I don't think it'll just be two men around the same age.
Yeah.
And I would just love to see the two of them talk about some things.
Me too. I think Jesse may be like 15, 20 years younger, or maybe a little more, but like I think Farrakhan's in his 80s, Jesse's you know what, maybe
wow,
10, 12 years younger. I don't know.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
but I would love to see it. And Jesse loves, like Jesse says this all the time, he loves truth like more than anything else. And so that's what I loved about him. And he's not really a respecter of persons. Like the other thing is he doesn't even really know. For the most part, in this case he would know, like that he's like a well-known figure. He knew Stacey Dash was well-known, but it was funny because he hardly knew Amber Rose. He didn't know that Amber Rose was as big of a public figure as she was, and there's been others, but that doesn't really matter to him. It may be saying stuff in his mind, but he doesn't listen to that. He loves the truth, and like he stays on the point that Louis Farrakhan is an evil man, because he has this anger, and he's feeding anger and lies mixed with the truth to blacks and to others. And
you know, and I'll be honest, man, when I heard that, it was one of the hardest things that I heard from Jesse, because I don't, even now, I'll be honest, I don't think of Minister Farrakhan as an evil man.
Right. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, but I do think of anger as evil.
Yep.
And I have to be honest with myself. And I'm actually seeking to have that same conversation, you know, if not with Minister Farrakhan, with somebody in the Nation of Islam. But I do think there is too much of that. Well, any of it is too much.
Yeah.
That is just the truth. And so standing there, you know, I remember when Umar Johnson was on talking to Jesse, and Umar's a friend of mine. And I know back in the day, Umar and I agree with almost everything, but I'm not the same angry young man that I was then.
Right.
And so now I find that I don't agree with Umar on almost anything.
Yeah.
But it's like
funny.
Go ahead.
Because they're both for, you know, they're both against homosexuality, say, or they're for being responsible, getting yourself together, being you know, not setting a bad example, like not tainting the public image of yourself, and your following and your people, but that anger is the poison pill, and the anger is a lie, because you don't have a right, and it's so that's what's wrong with the alt-right, so many of them, because the anger is what is unjustified. Everything else that Farrakhan's a Muslim, right? So I obviously don't think that part of it is true, but so much of what he may say has some truth to it, except, I mean, he's fallen for this police are killing black people for no reason type of thing, which is a lie. But Farrakhan and Umar Johnson and the alt-right, many of them, some of them may be totally right, who knows, but there may be some like Christian alt-right people that are on top of it. Vox Day possibly, I don't know. But this anger is that poison, and it's a sign of the lie. And there could be a lot of truth mixed with the lie, but if that anger is there, that's the poison, and you gotta you gotta get away from that.
There is no such thing as righteous anger, and
they say, I mean, it is biblical, a biblical concept, but they think that their anger is righteous anger, because every anger is a self-righteousness. You do feel better. You do feel morally better than the person. I've experienced it. and I've witnessed it in others. When you're angry, you think that you're right, and you think that they're wrong, and you become so self-righteous. It's ridiculous, and it's so embarrassing later. But but you're right. There is a righteous anger because the Bible does talk about it, but Jesse calls it discernment. Jesse says that there's no emotion to it. The Bible does say man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God requires, and it does say even after it says be angry and sin not, 4 verses later it says get rid of all anger. So like there is something that is not being looked at. That's one of the things that Jesse has brought out in the flaws of the Christian culture. Not only acceptance of sin, but the acceptance of anger. And they just assume that it's righteous anger. They don't know themselves.